A boy named Lazier was born in the kingdom of Jura. He was the only heir to the throne. Everyone was very happy when he was born because the baby looked beautiful and the people thought he would make a good leader. But over time, they came to see that they had made a mistake. The boy told his guards to be especially harsh with servants who made him angry. He told them to cut off limbs or even cut them in half, and he didn't feel a bit sorry for them. Now that Lazier is a teen, he's been given a gift, a book on how to call demons. The hooded man who brought it risked his life to give it to the prince as a gift. Lazier doesn't trust such a gift and thinks the man who brought it had bad intentions. Still, the man tells the ruler that everything will be fine and warns that summoning demons should only be done alone. After getting the man to come, the prince sends him away to wait for his reward. And finally, he can talk about how he dreams of a big war that only demons can start. Lazier hears the sound of breaking glass right now because a maid is bringing him wine. Unfortunately, she hears something she shouldn't have, and begging and pleading couldn't save her. The boy takes matters into his own hands and kills the maid, feeling bad about getting her blood on himself. But right now, his main goal is to open the book. As soon as he opens it, the boy is angry and upset because the pages are empty. He thought the man in the hood had tricked him, but when he put his bloody hand on the book, he saw a strange glow. He spoke his wish for the summoning to work, but blood started coming out of his nose and eyes. The prince then fell to the ground and the book flew into the air. The Demon King doesn't know where he is or what's going on. He is surrounded by darkness, and he can see the circle of calling. He remembers that the last thing he did was answer the phone because he was bored. The demon opens his eyes and notices that sweat is running down his face, which has never happened to him before. He looks at his hands and sees that his fingers are too big. He jumps up and runs to the mirror, where he sees that his whole body has swollen up as much as his fingers. The demon doesn't think it's true. During the ritual, the man who called him died and his body and soul were given to the demon. If the prince couldn't keep his end of the deal, how did the ritual even happen? It's possible that because he's a prince and the goddess of the sea protects him, he was able to do the summoning, but then he choked on his own blood and died right away. As the contract's executor, the demon must now stay in the body of the summoner until he gets what he wants. In such a short amount of time, the boy was able to say that he wanted to have a lot of power and be in charge of the whole world. When the demon sits on a chair and its leg breaks, he realizes that he needs to lose weight first. The next morning, the prince is served a delicious meal, and the servants are very careful with him because everyone in the castle thinks the maid who brought the wine tried to poison the boy. It all works out for the demon's good. The boy asks to clear the table of all the food and get ready for sports activities tomorrow. Everyone is surprised that the prince has decided to try sports for the first time in his life. When the king of hell goes back to his room, his swollen body makes him feel bad. He could use magic to lose the weight, but that might cause trouble. So he decides to ask for help from teeth and cars. He bites his finger until it bleeds, then calls the demon's servant. A small dragon appears. At first, he doesn't recognize the king of hell in his human form. But as soon as he does, he starts flying around the demon, happy to see him again after so long. This makes the king very angry. As it turned out, the talking dragon already knew about the contract that tied his master to the prince of this world. But when the dragon heard what the demon wished for, he was horrified. He was mean to the person who used to live in the body, but the demon was mean to the servant, because he was still the one who called the Demon King. But you couldn't make two wishes at the same time. And the servant didn't know how this brat had managed to wish for both power and control over the world. On the other hand, the demon seemed to have accepted his fate. Tay was the son of a line of demonic dragons, so he was born with their knowledge. The boss thought that the servant could tell him how to lose weight quickly and effectively, but the dragon could only give simple advice that everyone knew and suggest that they try to use their energy in other ways as well, so that they could keep doing what the king told them to do. The demon needed a body that was more practical than a small dragon. When the servant went into the prince's room, the demon told the dragon to eat the servant's body. After that, the prince and his servant Tay walked down the hall. He was going to his workout. His horse was already ready, and another servant asked his majesty if he could ride it himself. This made the prince feel bad, but he also knew that the horse wouldn't be able to carry his weight, so he decided to walk to the training grounds. The path uphill became steep, and after a while, it was hard for the prince to keep walking. The servant thought they should go back because his body was too weak, but the Demon King was determined to keep going until he passed out. He woke up in his room. The prince's lack of patience shocked the king, but he planned to keep trying, even though Portal had to carry him back over and over again on his back. After struggling for a month to get to the training grounds, the prince is now able to walk for long periods of time. Jay is happy with his master's progress, but the prince is worried about what might have happened in the demon world while he was away. When Tay tells him that terrible chaos has broken out on their homeworld since the king left, his fears are confirmed. Even though it's only been a month on Earth, a lot more time has passed in the demon world. This could cause problems, especially if their enemies start planning something. He needs to finish the contract as soon as possible and go home. When the main character finally gets to the training grounds, the head of the place greets him and starts to flatter the prince. The demon doesn't like it when a subordinate is treated this way, and he even uses some of the prince's words against him. He wants to start training as soon as possible, so he goes up to the future knights who are learning how to fight with sword. All but one of them bow to him. This boy keeps hitting the dummy with his only one-side sharpened sword. The head scolds the young man right away for being stupid, and it's only after he breaks the dummy he thought was a shadow that he bows to his highness. It turns out that he is just a regular person who won a contest to get this job. The demon likes the boy's good qualities and asks him to be his trainer. The prince tells the story of how his sword, which he used to just carry around as a toy, turned into a powerful weapon. Recently, one of his servants tried to kill him. To protect himself, the prince decided to learn how to use a sword. Because of this, he needs to lose weight, and the young man will train his highness until the extra weight is gone. The young man politely refuses, saying that he doesn't have the skills. The demon tries to morally pressure him by saying that he wants the prince to die because he's too fat, which could lead to an assassination attempt. The future knight suggests that he test his skills by having a duel with the prince's servant, which shocks the servant. The duel starts right away, and as soon as the young man takes the wooden sword in his hand, the future knight is so impressed by this that he won't even use one of his hands in the fight, which shows how professional he is. Since there is no knight in the fight, the demon servant also doesn't fight at full strength against a normal person. During the first attack, the young man sees that the servant is giving up and tells him not to. After that, the blows get stronger and more unexpected as the dragon decides to fight seriously for the sake of his master. Still, his opponent doesn't give up and successfully blocks another attack, only to be hit by Tay again when he least expects it. The young man moves out of the way of the attack and then grabs his opponent's sword, hitting him in the shoulder and hurting him. So the winner is Huion Whale, the knight's apprentice. Later, when the main character and his servant get back to the castle, the prince is so tired he can barely walk, and Tay is beaming with pride at the young man who beat him. With his skills, he doesn't seem like a human at all. The demon is surprised that his servant doesn't seem worried about him losing, but is instead very happy. He also sees that the young man is very skilled and realizes that he could be the prince's main sword. He is happy when he's doing what his master tells him to do, but the apprentice doesn't seem like the right person to train him. Even though he is very intuitive, he needs to learn some basics. The main character is sad that his loyal hellhound assistant is not with him, but he needs him to handle the situation in the demon world. Still, the dog is ranked third in the demon world. Only the sinner, Lucifer, and the demon king are stronger than the dog. The prince gets up from the ground and walks forward, looking at the sunset and the human world as he goes. The next day, the prince went back to the training camp and tried his trainer camp and tried to convince the young man to become his trainer. He won't make up his mind, so the chief gets mad at him and keeps flattering the prince in ways that aren't right. Then, by accident, he insults the ruler with one of his compliments. After an awkward pause, the man leaves, and the prince and the young man continue talking. He says again what his goal is and how rulers always need an excuse for what they do because they are always being watched. He also says that no one helps him out of the kindness of their hearts. After 5 months, the prince is finally in great shape. So the demon's work wasn't for nothing. The demon king likes his own body, but when the dragon shows up out of nowhere, he is shot. While the prince walks out of the room, he doesn't want to wear another accessory. Huion, who is waiting outside, brags about the prince and follows him. 5 months ago, he told the prince that his goal was not to work for the royal family or become a knight, but to fight in the void, hang guard, and become the commander-in-chief. At the moment, there's no such job in their state, but he is willing to do anything to get what he wants. Even as they cross the sea, the demon king tells the young man who wants to fight that his face is wrong and tells him how he plans to take over the world. During their conversation, both of them saw the prince's eyes flash red. Now that the three of them are leaving the palace, the dragon is telling the king all about the harvest festival. During that week, they worship the goddess of the sea who protects their country and give her the best of the harvest to show their thanks. Most of the time, the prince wouldn't take part in this tradition because he was terrified of water. But now, the demon king needs the goddess's help in the war, or at least her blessing to get his troops across the sea. One of the servants has already made a carriage, but the prince, who is very kind to animals, asks for his horse instead. Unlike most people, the dragon gives the main character a cloak when he starts his journey. People in the city are happy at the festival, and everyone has known since the prince was a child that he wouldn't show up. Since his nanny didn't watch out for him and he fell into the water, he has stayed away from bodies of water. Everyone was afraid to tell the ruler this face to face, but behind his back, they all say bad things about him. The goddess's ceremony has begun. The king's assistant was giving a speech when people started to gather around and horse hooves could be heard. The prince showed up with Weon, one of his closest servants, and the dragon. When people saw how skinny the prince was, they were shocked. Some said he was a pig, and the royal guard surrounded him with swords drawn. They only let him go so he could give the king's orders. The queen cried because her son was so thin, and she felt bad that she hadn't cared for him better. The king told the ceremony to keep going, and it was during the ceremony that the prince would climb on board the ship and pay the first tribute to the goddess. When it was found out that the handsome young man was actually the prince, everyone was shocked. The prince's mother begged the king to stop and not send their scared child on the ship. But the king didn't give up. People are happy that the ceremony is starting and that the prince is getting on the ship. On the ship, the main character and the dragon watch the sea creatures pull the ship from the deck to the servant. One of them looked like Ray, his master's faithful hound. But the king said that his own dog was 100 times better than all of them, even the dragon by his side. Each way, she came up behind the prince and told him not to stand too close to the edge. The prince was surprised to learn that his majesty had raised the puppy. In any case, they were supposed to get to their destination by evening, and the main character was already dreaming of meeting the goddess at the bottom of the sea, where a creature that looked like a fox was chained up and accused the prince of never coming to see him at night. The ship arrives at its destination. The time for the sacred ritual has come on board, and the main character remembers looking for the person who gave the prince the book for calling demons. Also a priest. That person is definitely not on the ship. So the demon king just tells his servant to keep looking when he gets there, since that person hasn't been found yet, and his reasons are still unknown. When it's time for the offering, the priest tells the prince to call the goddess of the sea by using the blood of a member of the royal family. The main character does this without thinking twice, even though it hurts his hand too much and causes blood to drip into the water. The distinctive sounds mean that the goddess has woken up. A creature that looks like a fox comes out of the water and gets angry at the young man who hasn't been to see her in 15 years. After that, the creature pulls the prince underwater. The main character isn't worried, so he quietly tells his servants to wait for him and rushes after the goddess underwater. She keeps yelling at the young man for not following the family tradition of bring gifts to the creature that promised to keep the country safe in exchange. The demon king realizes that this is not the goddess of the sea, but a celestial fox that was locked up here for her because he starts to talk to her telepathically, which surprises the fox, since people usually can't do this. Even though he didn't do it, he apologizes for leaving the fox there for so many years. He still feels bad about it. He begged the fox, who was crying, not to do this to people again because they are weak and can die. After a while, Sedna gets her tears to stop. She is surprised to see a demon in front of her, but she doesn't worry about him because the heavenly king has already punished her so that the demons don't scare her. She suddenly notices a wound on the non-human body and offers to heal it. Even though Sedna is in chains, her powers stay with her after she makes sure the creature is not angry. As the main character gets ready to leave, Sedna asks him to stay with her for a while, because she is tired of being alone. Then the demon king tells her to make a wish that he will grant. The fox can't think of anything better to wish for than more visits. She is afraid that people will forget her again because the bottom of the sea is full of disgusting things like trash and dead bodies. Even worse, she starts to go crazy when she talks to fish and seaweed. When the young man gives Sedna another chance to make a wish, it's clear that she really wants to be free. When she says his name, Sedna, bow. The prince agrees to do what she wants. The demon walks up to the chains holding the creature and breaks the first one. His hand gets burned, but the king has already done enough to help her, So he breaks the second chain. In the course of Sedna begs him not to do this, telling him that he has already helped her enough. Still, the fox is now on its own, but as soon as she takes a few steps, the prince trips and loses consciousness. He shouldn't have pushed himself so hard because the human body is weak, she says, hoping to bring him back to the surface and save him before it's too late. In the dark night, lightning flashed and the ship barely made it through the storm, which made the waves bigger and made it sway from side to side. H, who was worried about his majesty, saw a whale look gloomily into the water. He was very interested in what was going on at the bottom of the sea. With a loud splash, a white creature that looked like a mythical fox with big red eyes and a long tail came up out of the water, followed by a bright pink sphere that turned out to be his majesty. The sphere and the creature climbed up onto the ship's deck. The creature from the depths used magic, and in an instant, the storm stopped above the ship and the sun came out. The sailors were very surprised when the fox suddenly turned its attention to Taffy and Cars and saw that he was a demon dragon. The people on the ship and the sea goddess told the same creature not to be angry with them. With her magic, the goddess made the pink sphere break, revealing the sleeping main hero inside. Each way, the whale rushed to his body. His majesty was unconscious, and the people were happy that the building wasn't damaged. The sea goddess spoke to the people and told them that she was giving her blessing to the main hero because he would become the ruler of Jerry in the future. She called him to become her second contractee and offered to open any sea route for him. In exchange, she showed proof of their agreement. When the king finally woke up in his bed, his teeth and Cars were waiting for him with joy. It turned out that his majesty had been unconscious for 2 days. The youth was worried about the main hero, but he quickly reassured him by telling him about his mistake and building an explanation that the sea goddess had been bound by an angelic ring at the king's command, and now the ring was with the main hero. The youth argued with the king about the situation, explaining it was because of his concern, and then asked his majesty to be careful staying on the balcony. The man told him that this was a big deal for everyone in the country. In the evening, after the celebration dinner, the main hero, who was very tired, went to bed to sleep in the dark. A small white fox, which was actually the sea goddess in a smaller form, crept through the open window. Sedna told the king about the mark on his body as he lay down in bed with a sad face. She got permission to stay under the first rays of the sun. The demon dragon shows up in the protagonist's bedroom, where he is sleeping peacefully with Sedna, first next to her and then next to him. A young man brings a soft collar with a bell on Unbuilding's orders. For the fox goddess, the fox doesn't like the collar, but His Majesty won't let her take it off because if she does, it will be clear that she has a job in the palace. So the king decides to trick everyone, including the king in heaven, into thinking that the fox is a goddess instead of a messenger of the goddess. In the end, the fox agrees, and the main character praises her for it. The young demon watches this with satisfaction, while the gossips talk about the prince and his fox, while I'm building and telling the goddess about the difference between love and sympathy. This makes the fox think, and she decides that she loves the king. On the horizon, Teeth and Autos appear and announce the arrival of envoys from the great power of Kamas, where a new emperor just took the throne through very cruel means. The envoys came to invite His Majesty to the coronation of the Emperor of Commerce. The father of the main character has already told the envoys that his son will be there, but it sounds like the envoys are very surprised and confused by this answer. They thought the royal family would say no to everything. As it turns out, the invitation was just a nice thing to do, and no one really expected anyone to say yes. The prince comes up behind the envoy, which scares them and takes their minds off of what they were thinking. When the guests arrive, they bow to the protagonist's feet and apologize for being rude to him before. Later, in his room, the main character thinks about how hard it is to talk to his mother, because he doesn't usually understand the word parents. So he doesn't understand why the queen is worried about her son's teeth, and he asks His Majesty for permission to go back to the demon world for a while to see what's going on there. Instead, Building suggests a similar solution, and opening a demonic portal brings the Book of Death and the Birth of Demons. With the help of magic, the demonic book starts to quickly turn its red-lit pages. This gives the main character information and lets him or her know that nothing has changed in the demon world. When the king tells the dragon youth the news is good, the dragon youth lets out a sigh of relief. He tells the fox what the demonic book is about and what it can tell him, while at the same time thinking about how he could use his book in this world. The next second, the king seems to send the book back to the demon world by dissolving it in the air. He then calls up another book that looks like the first one but is blue and gives off a bright blue glow. The first book is about demons, and the second is about how the king of demons interacts with people. He makes it clear that Sedna's name is first on the list in this book, which makes him very happy. The man then comes up with the name The Book of Logia for the second book. On a sunny day, the main character, his servant demon, and Hewan are back on a ship. A large group of the king's subjects are with them, which makes His Majesty a little annoyed. It turns out that the main character's father told him to do this so that his mother, the queen of the state, wouldn't worry about him while he was traveling. His Majesty shows that he doesn't trust the people who worked for his father by calling them the king's dogs. He goes to the chief knight and tells him to write down all the names of the knights in his special magical book, followed by their signatures. He asks them to do the same without giving any details, and he manages to convince them to carry out the order. After the king of demons' order is carried out, he can easily command them, so he tells them to go back to him. People whose names are in the book can't disobey the king's orders until they die. Soon, the ship will get close to the shores of Kana's empire, where people will see him. They are very shocked by how His Majesty looks, especially the color of his hair. Everyone in the area knew the prince was coming to Congress, so they gave him a warm welcome and set up a large carriage to take them to their hotel that same night. They also told the man where and when the new emperor would be crowned. When she gets to the hotel, a fox goddess immediately suggests going for a walk. She tries to seduce the king of demons with something she thinks is valuable, but he is too tired and tells her to go for a walk by herself. The next morning, when the goddess of the sea is still missing, the king starts to worry. No one seems to have seen her in a while. Weon says that the fox took a morning walk through the village. The building is surprised to hear this because he didn't think she would go alone. The Demon King interrupts her breakfast to tell them that his beloved fox has gone missing. He tells them that she needs to be found as soon as possible and sends the knights to the capital alone, promising to meet up with them later when he has found the goddess of the sea. The knights don't like this plan and want to go with him, but the prince tells them that they can't. They have no choice but to obey him though. At the same time, in a nearby village, the Snow White Fox walks alone through the streets, which surprises the locals. This draws a lot of attention, and the goddess finds herself in situations where everyone wants to do something with her. Children want to play with her, and girls want to pet her. The kids tried to get the fox to play with them, but she didn't want to, so they tried to grab her by force. Sedna gets away, which is a good thing. She then walks around the streets, eats what she wants, and sleeps wherever she wants. But she is sad that the Demon King is not with her, and this makes her want to go back to him. She was going back. She sees a group of white doves running toward her in the square, which fascinates her. They fly away, probably because they are scared, except for one. He stays for only one day and starts talking to the goddess, telling her his name is Zadki. Then he changes into an angel who looks like a person but has wings. He makes Sedna very happy. The man tells her why he is in the Empire at the moment and asks her if it is the same reason the king put her in an underwater prison with a ring from heaven. The goddess of the sea is confused and doesn't know what to tell her friend, the angel. The man says that he will tell the gods about this, but Sedna cries and begs him not to. The fox wouldn't let go of the angel's leg because she didn't want her secret to get out. Even though the angel tried very hard to get her off his leg, she told the angel by accident that the ring of heaven was broken, which made the man even madder. The angry man told his friend to go back to the place where she was exiled and wait for a new punishment for her new mistake. During the conversation between the angel and the goddess, the main hero steps in to say that this shouldn't happen. He tells the fox that the deal is done, and the angel is shocked that His Majesty the Demon King was able to see through his barrier and pass through it. Sedna tells the angel that the king has a mark, which means that the contract is legal. As far as building lives goes, the contract is more important than a command from the king in heaven. Angel can't take the sea goddess away from him because she is under his control. When the king calls for the goddess, she runs to him and jumps into his arms. The angel keeps threatening them, but the king answers with threats of his demon servant's teeth, which surprises Zadkiel. But the king is firm, and he keeps threatening that there could be a war between worlds if the angel tells anyone what is going on. When the young angel thinks about past battles that were similar, it scares him. But he is sure that a mortal prince would not have a servant like that. In response, a huge dark dragon demon pops up behind him. The angel falls to the ground out of shock and fear, already checked in. The king looks at the pigeon, who used to be an angel, and keeps making threats in front of it. The man tries to keep his mouth shut in the way he usually does. The angel tells him that he will hide the truth about the situation for a while, but if the heavenly king asks him, he will have to tell the truth. The demon king forces the feathered angel to promise and sign his book, and then lets the pigeon go as soon as the feathered angel has signed. Late at night, the royal family of the empire was traveling to the capital in a carriage led by Night. 3 knights were in front of the carriage and 2 more were in back. The carriage had lanterns hanging from the roof, and His Majesty was bored as each knight told him about the next steps of their journey. Further down the road, there was a bridge that went over a river. When the demon king was riding in his carriage, his servant, a dragon, talked excitedly about the strange things about this bridge and other things. People who walked across it felt like they were walking on air, so the locals called it the Bridge of Dreams. Each young man riding a horse next to the carriage thought about how hard it would be to build such a bridge, while the demon dragon told him some shocking news. According to the book, this bridge wasn't built by humans, but by earthly elves. Huion didn't believe it because he thought they had died out a long time ago, even though His Majesty wasn't too surprised. Day said that the Empire of Khan took good care of its elves and that the demon king, who had never seen her elves, had very strange ideas about them. The carriage finally crossed the bridge on foot because it was too dangerous for carriages to do so. Each of them was scared of heights, so it was hard for them to walk on the clear bridge. When the king heard this, he gave him help and told him to admire His Majesty's white birds, which were flying quickly above them in search of someone or something. The fox goddess was afraid that a flock of birds might be after her, but Sedna saw them fly away. The demon king told his servant dragon to find the earth elf homes no matter what. Even though the heavenly servants made the demon youth unsure of his ability to do the job, he did it anyway because his lord told him to, so that she could protect the sea goddess from heavenly beings. The demon king gave the goddess foxes their color. While this was going on, Teeth and Autos were in a village, working hard to find the elves' homes. He was in a bind because of this task, so he was really upset. Unexpectedly, the demon youth ran into a group of robbers who pretended to be good Samaritans and helped the demon. When it became clear what the demon needed help with, the robbers looked at each other and were surprised. The group of men thought the demon dragon's words were just delusions, because the earthly elves seemed like something that couldn't be real. When the demon explained that it was his master's orders, Tay became interested, and the boys didn't seem to like the main character. But a group of men agreed to help him and tell him where the elves were in exchange for money. The demon foolishly agreed to give the robbers whatever they asked for. This was a lucky break. They decided to steal everything from the boy, so one of the thieves used a wooden bat to hide the servant from the bat. When he fell, the men took his bag, which turned out to be full of jewels. The boys were so happy with their finds that they ran out of the city quickly, hoping that the precious stones were real. From behind them, they heard a strange sound that sounded like a mix of coughing and laughing. When the leader of the gang turned around to look, he saw that the demon servant had gotten up, even though he had been hit in the head with a heavy object. Blood was coming out of his head, and he said in a bitter voice that his body now looked awful. This made the thieves very scared. The next second, Day spread his demonic wings and dragon tail, revealing his true form to the people. The boy grabbed the leader of the gang and squeezed him hard. The boy dropped the bag of stolen precious stones, and the rest of the gang threw him and his friend away, saving their lives from the demon. The demon servant killed all of the bandits, taking their life force and using it to restore his own. At the end of the battle, he saw the earthly elves watching from a distance. They were 2 twin girls who looked just like the book said they would, like a human, a cat, and a butterfly. The demon made all that noise on purpose to get the elves to come, and it worked. No one likes this chaos in his territory. Even though they were afraid of the demon, the elf sisters still told him about their flaws. In exchange for going with him to his master, the dragon servant gave the precious stones to the elves because they liked anything shiny. Surprisingly, the elves agreed. So the 2 girls stood in front of the king while he looked at them suspiciously and praised his servant. His Majesty looked at how the earthly elves looked. The girls told the man that they liked the king because he was beautiful, which was why they liked him. They liked the way he looked, especially his hair and black teeth, and Carr stepped in to help. They stopped the elves from touching the king in a rage, and told them that elves can see through souls and know who is in front of them because of this. Due to their poor language skills, the girls called the color black instead of white, and the demon dragon caught them. One girl stops the other from talking about black by telling her to stop, and the other girl agrees that the servant throws one girl onto the other in a rude way. When the sea goddess walks in, she sees the girls and asks who they are, while the sisters look at the fox with admiration. The girls start to hug Sedna, and the Demon King goes to sleep late at night. Everyone is asleep, but the call of their queen wakes the elves up, and they fly home. The demon servant stops them by blocking their path and not letting them leave without his master's permission. The girls don't like this and get angry. They make a shrill sound that wakes up the Demon King, who stops the fight and agrees to go with the sister. The Demon King has to answer the queen's call, so Leon, the goddess fox, and the elves head to where the borrowed elves are hiding. Juan thinks that this is too dangerous. His Majesty tries to get the man to feel sorry for him by telling stories about his weak heart. This makes the man agree to go with him and also feel sorry for him. Everyone follows the elven sisters under a glass bridge. With their wing magic, they broke down the barrier that had been blocking the door. At the side of the opening portal, there is a cliff that people without wings can't go down. The other elven girls successfully led the group to their home. The main hero and Honwin were embarrassed by this way of getting down, but the demon dragon was happy that they made it safely. After they left, the portal closed and the elves' barrier again covered their hideout. But a few birds in heaven, including Zatkiel, saw the magical entrance. Meanwhile, the slow descent to the Earth Elves' hideout was almost over. The group saw light at the end of the tunnel, and when they got there, it was too bright and blinding. The elves lived in a beautiful garden with statues, rare flowers, and a big tree with small elf houses that looked like the tree's fruit. In the middle was a big statue with the Queen of the Elves sitting on top. The girl greeted the guests by saying she was the Queen of the Elves. Her wings were a lot bigger than her wards, and she looked a lot older than her wards, which showed who she was. She was standing on a valuable flower. The queen was happy to see the Demon King, and she told him that she knew who he really was. His Majesty was also happy with the meeting. The Demon King told His Majesty that the reason for his visit was the Earth Elf's skill at building. The Demon King wants to bring the elves to his country to improve the buildings and architecture there. The queen gives hints that she won't agree, and to the king's surprise, he agrees with her right away. He cares more about staying out of trouble, which is why she calls her guards wards. The demon thinks this is a lie. The queen is quick to show that this isn't true by taking out her most valuable flower, opening it and pointing to the fruit inside. The sea goddess and the demon king seem to understand what's happening and are very shocked. The queen of the earth elves says that her subordinates found it on the road and brought it to their hideout because it could have been damaged or fallen into the hands of humans, which would have been terrible. In both cases, the fox goddess doesn't believe this at all. And when the building tries to calm her down, the fruit turns out to be the next heavenly king fruit, which gives birth to celestial creatures. In this case, the fruit for the next generation of celestial kings is now in front of them. Now we know why the birds in the sky were looking for it so hard. His Majesty the Demon King really can't believe that the thing was just lying on the road. The situation is so ridiculous that it really shocks him. The Demon King tells the Elf Queen that keeping the fruit in their lair is dangerous and risky. The girl knows how dangerous it is, especially since the gods think the elves stole the fruit instead of finding it. He laughs and tells her that no one will believe her. She also asks him to take the fruit in exchange for her elves helping to build things in his country. This is shocking, and it makes the demon feel like he is surrounded by a wicked aura of strong demonic energy. The queen says she is sure the king won't destroy the fruit, and she asks for his mercy directly, in hopes of getting him to help. The sea goddess steps in and begs the demon king with tears to give back the valuable egg and her sister. Finally, His Majesty and Bilden agree to help the elven queen, and the company decides to find a safe way to give back the Ea. It's time for a big meal. The demon king has been eating beetles for dinner, which is obviously not something he likes. He says no, and his servant gets the food. The king says that the stakes are too high and that he can't even show his true form, let alone use his demonic power. He also says that Sedna is hidden, so they can't look for the queen's power. But there is a high chance that they and the empire with which they have a deal will be in danger. The demon comforts the queen by telling her that it's not her fault. The queen agrees to take the risk and send the celestial fruit to another world, even though it's not her fault. The next second, the elf's house starts to fall apart. It looks like the gods and goddesses have come to get the egg. The main character grabs the hand of the elven queen just as a huge rock falls on them, narrowly missing the demon king and his dragon servant. He runs to them because he is worried about the safety of His Majesty. In the meantime, the fox doesn't know what's going on. The elves fly to their queen, who is just as scared as they are of her. Angels appear at that moment, and the fox holds on to the egg so she doesn't lose it in the chaos. The queen is mad at the angels, but they only came to get what was rightfully theirs. Waylon is ready to draw his sword because he can feel the tension rising. But his lord only gives him a look to tell him not to. The knight is very scared of the dangerous situation. The angels threaten the elves, and the queen is angry that despite their words, they had been taking care of the egg where the child of their future ruler lives. And now these angels have come in and threatened them. Even when they hear that the elves found the egg in the human world while looking for precious stones and brought it to their home, the celestial beings don't apologize. Instead, they keep making threats. They had already planned to give it back, but if the angels have come for it, they can have it. The queen takes the egg and gives it to the angels, but they still hint that the elves may be punished before leaving the Demon King. He tells the dragon that the future ruler in the egg is calling him by name and offering to meet again, but the dragon says it can't happen. The elves are happy that things turned out well. Their guests are about to leave, and the queen thanks them for all they've done, even though the main character thought they didn't do anything special. Now that the ruler knows, she needs to get rid of her own fear in order to protect everyone else. She plans to send the twins to wash the chashu and run it to the surface with the guests. Even if they don't get what they want, the kids can still go there as a field trip. The eyes of the queen worry the king of demons. Since she became queen, she hasn't opened them, so he thinks she's hurt. It turns out, though, that this is not true. Just by looking at someone, she can turn them into stone. This is something that only the queen can do, and she hasn't opened her eyes since she became queen. The queen really wants to see the sea, but she's afraid that someone will get hurt. Still, the Demon King talks her into going, and as they stand on a high cliff by the sea, she agrees. And finally, the elf queen opens her eyes and looks around her with happiness. She suddenly looks into the eyes of the Demon King and is so scared that she falls to the ground and puts her hands over her eyes. Her surprise is immense. When she finds out that the Demon King is not hurt, she is shocked. It turns out that he is not affected by her magic. The queen thanks him once more for everything and says she will help him if he needs it. To do this, he asks her to sign a book with all the names of the people he has contracts with. After hesitating for a while, the queen signs it. Now, if he needs help, all he has to do is tell the twins. For the coronation, the group goes to the city of Kinesia. As soon as the travelers got out of the carriage, they were a little confused by the busy capital. The twin elves were very interested in everything around them. As they looked at everything, the dragon told them to stay together, because it's easy to get lost in a big city. Even though the master didn't say anything, the elves are easily distracted by anything bright and could easily get left behind. The servant also told the prince to take a safer route, but he chose to cut through where it was shorter. The elves got distracted by one of the shop windows, and now they can't catch up with the rest. They almost get hit by a carriage, but the driver stops in time, and an aristocrat gets out and asks the elves to forgive him. He is nice to the boys and offers to give them a ride, but in reality, he wants to make them his slaves or sell them. The boys are smart enough to see what he is up to, so they don't go with him. But the greedy man won't let them go. Instead, he grabs one of the twins by the wing and pulls him toward him painfully. At that moment, the main character and the man in the hood show up. They both hit the rude man at the same time, making him let the elves go. The unknown young man has scars all over his body, and he jokes around with the main hero. The nobleman is angry, and when they hear the noise, the guards come running over. The man tells them right away to catch the people who are brave enough to attack him. The elves are scared, and their guardians are getting ready to fight. The guards offer the chance to give up on their own, but no one plans to take them up on it, and the knights who came with him rush to help the prince either way. When they find out that the person in front of them is the prince of another kingdom, everyone is shocked. No one expected to meet him this way. After everything is over, the elves are scolded for leaving without permission, and they are very embarrassed that the king tells them not to run so far away again to watch something. He also scolds the young man who helped him without being asked instead of thanking him. Also, a stranger tells the young man not to congratulate the emperor on becoming emperor because he killed 4 people, including 2 children, to get to the throne. The main character responds rudely to the stranger's unwanted advice, and the stranger leaves, calling the prince the father of the elves on his way out. When they get to the palace, the fox and elves are happy about the soft beds and want to sleep as soon as possible. The master decides to take a walk around the imperial palace to see what's going on. Weon insists that the main character shouldn't go alone because it would be bad for the prince's reputation to wander around the palace alone at that time. The young man thinks the knight has a good point and takes his advice, inviting his dragon servant along. He still can't get used to the fact that there is a constant morale war between the aristocracy and the human world. It seems strange to the Demon King, because in his world, wars are judged by how strong one side is, not how much they hurt the other side's mind. In the garden, the girls talk about the white-skinned princess who was sitting with them. There are rumors that they have actually seen the emperor, which turns out to be true. As soon as the girl gets cold, the emperor is kind and gives her his cloak. Everyone is amazed by her story, and then they see a young man walking through the garden. It turns out to be the main character. The girl who told the story about meeting the emperor calls out to him to say hello. She introduces herself as the princess of the kingdom of Frederick and invites the prince to join her and the other princesses for tea. The young man agrees to come to the table, and everyone is glad to have him. After a while, the main character says that it's already late and suggests that they end the conversation by asking each other 2 questions. His new friend first asks about the sea goddess who protects their country and what she's like in person. The Demon King tells the truth about his friendship with the goddess and how she marked him by dragging him to the sea floor during their first meeting. The second question is about the diplomatic side of the young man's country. It also shows that the girl is interested in magic, which has special powers and is wanted by many rulers. It is, however, hidden by the wave that surrounds the prince's country. When asked about it, he answers cautiously because he knows how sensitive the subject is. He even puts her in a tough spot by suggesting that his country and the empire might work together. The demon lord wants to talk to the emperor, who just showed up behind the girls. Back in the castle, the future emperor laughs at the fact that the main character didn't recognize him on the street. He was the one who helped the elves and tricked the prince of the country next door. As it turned out, he couldn't stay in the castle any longer, so he didn't care what people would think if they found out who he really was. When the Demon King asks the emperor why he helped the elves, he says it was because his sister and brother would have been the same age as those kids if they hadn't died. At first, it was only his mother and his siblings who helped him. He didn't want power. He just wanted to take care of his family. But when they were killed in an accident, he realized that the only way to protect the people he cared about was to get to the top. Everyone probably knows what bad things the emperor did to get to this point, where the goddess Fox is offering his highness a walk around the capital of the empire. The man is not happy with this offer, but this time he suggests that the sea goddess take a walk with his personal demon servant instead. There is a soft knock on the door. He and the demon dragon servant of the king of demons walk into the room. The second demon tells the king that His Majesty, the emperor, has invited them to breakfast. The high-ranking demon doesn't like this, but he has to accept it because he has no other choice. The servant convinces the king to take this step, and the Demon King enters the banquet hall, where other people are already eating. People with noble blood from the Empire of Khanas were invited to breakfast, along with the Prince of Juray, who represented his country. His Excellency and Bilden, the main character, are very surprised by how many people are there. He doesn't like this at all. The man thought naively that they would be alone. As the Demon King walks through the banquet hall, he passes by other people's tables, drawing the attention of the nobles. As the Demon King makes his way to his table, people look at him with awe and surprise. When the main character passes by another table, he sees an aristocrat he had met on the street. The same jerk who tried to kidnap the elf sisters was sitting nearby and also recognized His Highness the Prince. The poor doorman was so shocked that he fell off his chair, and the building quietly laughed as he turned his attention to the man who was lying on the floor. When the emperor walked into the hall, everyone stood up to show respect for the leader, who was smiling. He greeted everyone and wished them a good morning. He then looked up and saw the king of demons. After that, the emperor told the sad people in the hall that he didn't like how they were feeling. They tried to quickly change his mind, but it was clear that they were afraid of him. The jerk who had fallen off his chair before had the nerve to complain to the emperor about the envoy of another country, bringing up what had happened earlier, but in a way that is totally different. If the emperor wasn't the same person who helped the demon in battle, he might have believed the man's story. Instead, the man believed his opponent's version of what happened and made sure no one knew he was involved. The emperor accused the nobleman, and then he went up to him with a sword, making everyone around him scared. The man made the aristocrat very scared by threatening him with his sword. He thought that the aristocrat was responsible for what had happened, and had also broken 2 laws of the Khanas Empire. Instead of trying to prove his innocence, the person who did it naively tried to get the emperor to punish the envoy, a prince from another country, first. This made things worse for the poor man who was bending over the criminal's shoulder. The emperor laughed as he told him the truth about who had hit him in the face. This shocked the baron, but before he could say anything, he was killed. The emperor cut open the baron's chest with his sword at the same time, and the baron's lifeless body fell to the cold floor. People who had gathered to watch the event whispered bad things about it. Now, the aristocrats began to shout words in support of the dead nobleman, explaining why he was a nobleman, and saying they didn't trust what the envoy from another country said. The main hero just stood there and didn't say anything. His hunger was gone, and it seemed like that was all he cared about. All of the people's claims about what happened were met with a threat from the emperor, or more specifically, an invitation to come talk to him, which was basically the same thing. At the same time, the fox goddess was upset that the king had left her alone. She told the girls, including the princess of the empire, about her feelings and drunken ramblings. It's a deal. She listened carefully to the fox in hopes of learning something about His Majesty the Prince of Jerry. Her plan to get the sea goddess drunk, however, did not work. She only heard the fox complain. So she ran out onto the balcony and pointed to the moon, which she thought she could see in the middle of the day. When the girls heard this, they were confused and thought that the fox must be crazy. But the goddess pointed to the water, where there was a reflection of something golden that looked a lot like the moon. Then she jumped off the balcony into the pond, and a few minutes later, when she was drunk, she pulled something golden out of the water. The fox was sad that it wasn't the moon because she wanted to see what the sea goddess had taken from the water. The girls were surprised to see that it was a golden triaxe. The sea goddess wanted to give it to the king of demons, but he suddenly appeared behind her, yelling that it was the moon. Sedna gave it to His Majesty in Belden. The man didn't know what it was until he was told about the triple X. At the same time, the king told the servant to take the drunken fox to her room. The king didn't know what to do with this strange creature, so he told his subordinate to send it back to the pond. Each Weon wanted to do what the order said, but then the turtle started talking to the king of demons. She asked for his help. When the protagonist finally meets someone who hears him and doesn't run away, the Tronics tell him to do one thing. The turtle has nothing to give in return, but it needs help very much. The Demon King doesn't care about her and wants to send her back to the pond. Only when the turtle says she has a message for the emperor does the prince become interested. The emperor's loud laughter wakes the fox up. She sees the prince and the country's leader sitting on the floor next to the moon she pulled out of the lake. She runs up to the moon and grabs it in her paws. At that point, the Troy annex can't take it anymore and pops his head out of his shell to tell everyone who he is. The guys tell the fox that after drinking, he should sleep a little longer. The emperor doesn't know why everyone in the room but him can hear the creature in the pond. The goddess of water offers to help him, so the main character and the other characters go to the pond where the Tronics live. The turtle explains that there are gates at the bottom of the pond. Mendel Zona told him to watch over them until the emperor's family goes through hard times. Now, in order to get to them, they have to drain the pond, which Sajna does with ease. She makes a way through the water for the emperor, the prince with his dragon servant, the knight, and the Troy. On the bottom, there's a seal with the emblem of the imperial family. The turtle says that to open the gates, the master must stand on this symbol. The boy isn't sure at first, but he does it anyway. At that moment, it became clear that the gates were actually a way in. The prince grabbed the emperor by the sleeve to help him, and the whole group ended up in an underground dungeon. When a twin finally wakes up, he starts looking for his master. While the dragon servant tries to wake him up, it is hard for the prince to open his eyes. While this is going on, Tay freaks out about the king's injury and quickly gets a special crystal to light up the room. Everyone is surprised that the dragon can use magic, even if it is only useful and a little bit powerful. The emperor says that this place looks like a closed underground canal from a long time ago. No way to get in or out. The Demon King tells them that a summoning spell brought them here, but they can't go back the same way. The main character looks down and sees blood on his shoulder. He had landed badly on a sharp rock. The fox wants to help him get better, but she knows she can't because there's no water nearby. Each one comes to help because he always has medicine and bandages with him. They were able to put a bandage on Triune X, who is on his back and can't get up. He asks the group to turn him over, but the King of Hell is getting madder at him because he brought them to a place where they have no choice but to find the inheritance. On the way, the Demon King asks the Emperor why his kingdom is having such a hard time. It turns out that the aristocracy makes those who want to be kings fight for their support. which is how his mother and sisters died. After he is crowned, the emperor plans to put an end to this and make the country better and more comfortable. The group is caught off guard when arrows start flying at them, and they just barely manage to avoid them. Then Meinl tells them that there are many traps in the corridor for people who don't belong there. But it's too late because another attack starts on the group, which includes the emperor and the main character Haon. The golden turtle spears and the fox goddess were thrown. It seemed like danger was around every corner, but Wheon protected his highness without fear, blocking the spears with his own body. He was clearly determined to keep fighting, and he used his sword to stop the attack. Another spear was thrown at the demon king from the other side, which he bravely blocked with a kick. The heir to the throne noticed that these two assistants only got along on the battlefield and in other emergency situations. He was angry that there were traps in their way and hoped he wouldn't have to deal with them again. The golden turtle told him that it would be safe in the room with the inheritance, but the rest of the group was distracted by something off to the side. In total darkness, a monster's red eyes started to glow. This scared the others, but the demon king said something snide. When it was dark, there were many red-hot eyes of strange creatures on each side of the group. They told the group that they were from the demon world, and as they came out of the darkness, they showed their true forms. They were big black things that looked like evil dogs. Their eyes burned and they had wings on their backs. They were very angry and bared their teeth at the people who had come to live there. The evil dogs barked and got ready to attack the business. The brave dog was ready to protect his master and the other dogs, who were also ready to fight, while the man got ready to stop the angry monster dogs from attacking. When the dog realized how bad things were, he put himself in a submissive position in front of them. This surprised me. The next second, the dogs were happy and wagging their tails with no signs of being mean. Both the man and the emperor were shocked. The demon servant said that he didn't know why something like this happened, but everything showed that the demon king was involved. The monster dogs are part of the demon world and must obey their king, the main character. To hide his involvement, His Majesty in Bilden pretended that the fox goddess made the monster dogs calm down and obey. This makes Sedna feel uncomfortable, but she agrees to it right away. At the same time, the angry aristocrats argue that they haven't known where His Majesty the Emperor is for 2 days, even though they've looked everywhere for him. People talk about who the man was and why he left. The person who saw the person go missing told these people about what happened, but now she has to keep quiet. Probably the Emperor's advisors are trying to figure out what's going on now that he's gone. They decide to deal with the unit that only serves the Emperor while His Majesty is away, or even let the demonic dogs help the company move forward by destroying everything in their way that's not necessary. Wheon falsely feels happy that the goddess of foxes can control them, even though he knows it's not true. The Demon King says that the fox helped him a lot. Sedna, on the other hand, is thrilled to hear praise from His Majesty and doesn't care that she doesn't do anything to help the group. The Golden Triax says that the group has arrived at their destination, which is a big closed door with a magical pattern in front of them. The Emperor in the building looks at the dogs to see if they can help him open the door, but the dogs run away. The door has no handle or lock, so the Emperor doesn't know how they will get inside. The king tells him to break down the door, which he does with ease with his sword. The door was destroyed right away. The boy, meanwhile, surprises the Emperor. As the others go inside the building, torches light up and give the room a golden glow as they enter. The demon servant draws their attention to strange decorations on the wall. His Majesty, the Demon King, notices that one of the decorations looks like his sword, which surprises everyone. The king says that the picture shows his sword, which is a treasure of the state of Guerrera that has been passed down through the royal family. The sword is shown in the underground canal of the Emperor's empire, which seems strange to him. What is the link between these two countries? The Golden Turtle tells His Majesty the Demon King that the picture is of a demonic sword. This shock in building annex says that the ornament shows a sword from the world of demons and a flute from heaven. The second thing in the picture is right where the inheritance is, and the turtle points to the exact spot where the flute is. The group moves toward the cobweb-covered box at the end of the hallway. The turtle says that only the true heir of the imperial family can open the box. When the Emperor carefully cleans the box of dust before opening his family's inheritance, he is able to do so, showing that he is the true heir of the empire. Inside the box is a white flute from heaven. The Demon King says that if you blow into the flute, something will happen. The Emperor is trying to play, but it doesn't sound good. Then, all of a sudden, the Golden Triax is filled with golden light and rises high. an old woman appears from the sky and praises her servant, the turtle, before hugging her. She tells the emperor how she got the flute and gives it to him. The day of the coronation had come, and noble aristocrats had gathered in their best clothes to congratulate His Majesty on this happy day. In the meantime, Princess It-Will-Be-Dell's maid was doing her hair and giving her advice on how to do it best. The girl asked her ward if the emperor had come back, and the princess answered in a naive way that he had. The girls talk about rumors that the emperor and the heir prince who came to Kaunas have gone missing. As a representative, the princess thought that something terrible had happened in the temple, because the emperor's people were already there getting ready for the coronation and feast that would follow. Meanwhile, a high-ranking man who had previously named his nephew the Reserve Emperor found out from a subordinate that the squad they had decided to get rid of without Julius's permission had vanished without a trace the night before. He told the subordinate to find the squad and kill them, as well as to kill the emperor if he showed up. But the servant said that the emperor was probably dead because he had fought against the aristocracy in the past. Emperor Julius was now in danger, and all the knights of the imperial court were looking for him with orders to kill him. The solemn coronation began, and all the noble subjects were excited about the celebrations. The gates of the temple opened, and a man in royal robes walked into the hall. His job now was to become the leader of the Kaunas Empire. People were shocked when they saw this man because it wasn't the Julius they knew. Instead, it was a stranger who was the firstborn son of Duke Algor. The priests began their speech by telling the people the sad news that the original heir had been replaced because the emperor princess was away. But the same man, Duke Elgar, told her that Julius had turned down the throne himself. The princess was determined to cancel the coronation until the emperor understood what was going on. The aristocrats were shocked and protested against the coronation of the duke's son. Elgar used threats to get rid of them, and he also told the princess that he would take her place as the Empress of Kalmar. The holy minister keeps going with the ceremony to crown the heir to the Kaunas Empire. The envoy of the heavens stays quiet in the temple as the bishop reads his rites, and everyone else is respectfully quiet. The new emperor walks around with his head held high in front of Princess Igor. Adele is shocked, but she has to keep quiet. She can only hope that Julius will come back. The ceremony is interrupted by a loud bang on the doors behind all the invited lords, making them quickly turn around. A man who has been shot in the back falls onto the red carpet and dies right in front of everyone's eyes. The aristocracy is completely shocked, and panic breaks out. The people of the Kaunas Empire are scared, but only until Julius, the real emperor of the Kaunas Empire, comes into the temple. The princess is thrilled to see His Majesty, and the nobles are still in shock. At the same time, the emperor is walking toward the place where the coronation will take place. Even though the duke is surprised, he doesn't show it. The angry emperor tells him how angry he is and threatens to punish him. The duke orders the knights to surround the emperor and point their spears at him. But this didn't scare Julius one bit. The heir to the empire says out loud that the duke has betrayed him, which causes them to fight in front of the people. The duke tries hard to blame the emperor for the situation, but Julius has something to say in response. Elgar protests and tries to overthrow the throne's successor with his accusations, but Julius just laughs loudly. The poor princess is worried about His Majesty. The emperor doesn't say he's not guilty, but he still says the duke is more to blame and draws his sword on him. Julius tells his soldiers to kill all of the emperor's traitors, who quickly appear in the temple and rush into battle. A brutal battle breaks out between the emperor's soldiers, who want to kill the duke as soon as possible, and the knights who work for the emperor. Earth elves come to the temple to help the heir to the throne in the battle, using their magic to destroy the enemy's weapons. The duke is surprised when they show up. The demon king tells him that they are keeping the promise they made to him personally. This completely shocks Albir, His Majesty, who then shames the duke in public for his actions. In response, the man shouts that the heir to the throne from another country should be killed. Guerrera and the knights rush into battle to kill the demon king, but he protects him. He quickly deflects the attack and the knights scatter in all directions. The main hero is sure that they will lose, so he tells them to try to attack him. The battle is very exciting for His Majesty, the king of demons, and he is ready to fight. He pulls out his sword. At the same time, the duke is in complete shock. The heir to the empire talks about how the duke will die and how sad he is. The aristocrats are killed quickly by the imperial army in the chaos of the battle. Elgar tries hard to make Julius feel bad about causing the bloody chaos in the Holy Temple, but the emperor doesn't care. To show that he has a right to the throne and that his inheritance is holy, the emperor takes out his celestial flute and starts to play his melody. He then calls a large golden triax to him. The flute changed the turtle into a sacred creature that looked more like a dragon than a turtle. The sound of the pipe causes the triune X to fall from the sky. The remaining aristocrats are amazed by what is happening. The priest tells the emperor that he has a sacred creature, and everyone bows to the emperor, showing respect for him. The knights start to trust the emperor, so they put down their weapons and kneel before his majesty. The duke also falls to his knees, either because he has lost or because he wants to do what Julius wants. Del stands and smiles as he watches the new ruler of the Khan's empire. The real leader, the girl, says hello to Julius, and he is glad to see her. The rebellion against the emperor is no longer going on, but the violent crackdown went on for a few more days. So the emperor killed all merchants and people who could have become merchants. He also won the support of a holy creature and was recognized by the nobles as a leader in the King of Demons' chambers. When Julius comes in, both the prince and Huion bow to him, which makes his majesty uncomfortable. Later, he and the main character have a more normal conversation. The emperor notices that the king is drenched, so he asks the main character what happened. The main character tells him that it was the fox goddess who tried to heal the king's wound but failed, causing chaos. The servant dragon is upset that this situation has given him more things to worry about. The emperor is very surprised that the king of demons' wound hasn't healed. The main character says it's because of how the royal family's bodies are built, but it's clear he's lying. The building then tells Julius how weak he is without the help of the sea goddess, which amazes Julius with his bravery. Out of gratitude, the emperor asks the prince what he wants from him. The king doesn't know what he wants, though, so the emperor suggests that the prince become his younger brother. The leader of the Khan's empire asks the main character to become his younger brother because he wants to be closer to him and take care of the heir to the throne, Prince Guerrera, as if he were his own relative. The demon king wonders what this can give him. Being related to the emperor literally means making a connection between the two countries and improving relations. Julius gives a powerful speech to the demon king, which makes him very impressed. The emperor then shows the main character his sacred animal, the triune X, which can now change its size and become very small. The main character agrees to become a brother, but the emperor gives him one more condition to sign in his magical book. This is proof that they are related. Now the men make a promise to each other that they will never betray each other. The time has come for the main character to go back to his home country. The emperor and the princess plan to get married. When the demon king tells them how happy he is for them, the princess asks if she can invite him to Guerrera, where she will have a party. Julius and his fiancée are getting ready for their wedding while they wait for his majesty. He is not all that excited to come. The main character is surprised when the emperor hugs him. Julius tassels. The hair on the king's head was like a younger brother and almost got into trouble with the king. The knights of his majesty quietly laugh at this, and the brothers tell each other to be careful. Finally, Building and his entourage leave for home. This is the end of the first season of This Man. If you want a second season, please like and comment on the videos, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos.